Anyway, the first thing that happened in the timeline of Nuclear Throne is the end of the world as we know it. This was some kind of cataclysmic event of an unknown nature. Like, Rami says that the developers and the characters argue about like how it happened and like what it was. They think about what it could have been and they argue about it like, yeah, no, it had to be this and that kind of stuff. What we do know for sure is that it created melting, so it had to be able to like melt skin from bone, and then all of this other stuff like the radiation and things everywhere. It had to be some kind of event like that. It was long enough in the past to the characters to be considered ancient, and any of the characters that have come into consciousness or existence since then don't have any recollection, so they don't remember like their previous lives or anything because of radiation and whatnot. And some of them, of course, didn't have minds in the first place, like Plant. And the event also allowed for the game's multiple universes. Basically, that it fits into the lore that it's randomly generated, basically. Every game you play is different because it's all in a different universe. So when you die with a character, for example, in that particular universe, that character is actually just dead forever. So you are always playing in a different universe where the character's alive. So that means like when you loop and stuff, when you kill the throne, all those other characters are dead. And that was something that they argued about with the lore, and that's why they actually brought the bodies back after they removed them, because they decided, yeah, it was better for them to all be dead. Which is kind of interesting. So, that's the end of the world as we know it. And another effect from it is that it created 2 of the 3 portal types that we know. The purple portals are volatile. They destroy anything nearby. At the time I did this interview, it was intended that the explosions still damage you, because it was supposed to be a dangerous thing when the portals opened. So that was supposed to happen, but they fixed that. Yeah, it says apparently soon to be changed. The characters are scared of them, especially like the first times they see them, because they don't know if they just like make you stop existing, if they just like destroy you, or anything horrible like that. And the way the purple portals work is they only show up when there's very little life around, and it brings anything that it takes into, like, toward a certain path, in a certain direction, and they're going towards the throne. So that's actually Rami's theory, by the way. JW thinks it's random, so you actually, it's up to you to decide, basically. I like the idea that they're taking you in a particular direction, and like it's obviously not really specific and whatnot. It goes, you know, but that they're taking you generally towards the throne rather than randomly around, and eventually you end up at the throne. And that kind of tells you that there might have been a purpose, or like something that caused the end of the world as we know it. And another possibility is that it could be something about the throne itself that's like using the portals to bring the characters to the throne, because for some reason they need to be there. And if you'll notice, when you go through the portals, each area gets like more significant and more advanced man-made objects. So like in the wastelands, you really just have like the bandits and stuff. It's just nothing. Then you have the scrapyard where you start seeing the cars, and like Big Dog is like a giant robot that we think was retrofitted to have weapons and stuff. Like it was just originally kind of like an actual big dog for like toys or a ride or something like that. And then you have the Frozen City where they're like all the robots and stuff. You know, so it keeps going like that. And then the palace is obviously a palace. And let's see. The purple portals do not cause you to travel through universes or dimensions or time. So they're direct. You're in the same universe, in the same dimension, at the same time. It's just a direct, like, locational transport. Then we have the green portals, which are precise. Like, they're specific, they're controlled, and you can activate them intentionally with more things around. They don't have to be around low life. And the only times that they show up, they only lead to and from very particular locations that we don't know the location or like how far from where you start they are. So they're really precise portals. It's possible that they transcend universes and time. So you might be traveling to a different universe or a different time period, but we don't know. And something that needed to be expanded on more when I was taking the notes. Going back to the campfire has significance. It's done with a green portal, so it's meant to be specific. You're supposed to go there and nowhere else. That's kind of what I got on that one. And this is where I talk about how the characters being dead at the campfire was a possible bug, but they actually brought it back on purpose because it fit the lore better. And since you use a green, well, you were in previous updates using a green portal. If you're not still, you might still be using a green portal to start looping, which would, yeah, you were a while ago, which would make sense for the areas being different because you're going to a different universe, and that makes it like a lot more sensible that you use a green portal. But then last update it was a purple portal, that giant purple portal I believe, and now you sit on the throne and I don't know how to loop anymore, so that could be changed. And the IDPD, whom I haven't really talked about much yet, but we'll talk about later, they pay a lot more attention to the green portals. They don't want the characters knowing anything about the green portals if they can help it. So if they see that, that's why they show up right away and they are just going to try and kill you. They need you to stop finding anything about that. And then the third type of portal is the IDPD's portals, which are going to be talked about with the IDPD as an entity, rather than right now with the other two portals, because those aren't quite related to the end of the world as we know it. IDPD is pretty interesting, though. So, somewhere not long after the end of the world as we know it, or at least not too long, it was earlier in the timeline, but no particular time that anyone knows, because it's not like they have precise communication. The legendary Proto mutant showed up. The characters and, like, you know, the world knows about the Proto mutant, and they talk about it in whatever you call their communication. That trash talk, of course, but like if you can really call it communication, they talk about it and they, you know, tell stories and whatnot and stuff like that. But they don't know anything about the Proto mutant for sure. The characters, most of them, did exist at the time, but for the most part they were not active or like not mutated or in some form of like hibernation or recovery kind of thing to not be just like dead and radiated. So they didn't experience or like know or see the Proto mutant or anything like that. For some reason though, the Proto mutant had a lot more knowledge and a lot more ability than any of the characters that we get to play. We know that it set up or had to do with the setting up of the Proto statues and the crown vaults. Proto mutant knew something, probably had some knowledge of creating and manipulating the green portals. And the idea is that the green portals use radiation to create or at least power the green portals to and from those places. And the Proto mutant knew something about that we just don't because we didn't set the stuff up. It could have to do with the throne's final form, or the first form even, because at the time this was due to the use of a green portal after the throne, which has changed, at least so far. It could come back. And we see a skeleton sitting on the throne that the player couldn't reach at the time that this was talked about. So the skeleton being there obviously represented something you couldn't get on the throne at the time. So the skeleton had to be something important, basically. And so the throne itself seems a lot more mechanical and a lot less mutant, but the final form is like actually a mutant. And that's apparently in the style of a guardian and a throne. It's a machine powered by radiation, so it's like if a guardian infused itself with the throne somehow. Now, I was supposed to expand on more of this, but that's kind of the idea, and that's what I've got for you. So next comes the characters, and then the IDPD, and that's what we got. So for the characters, I was initially going to get all of the loading screens for the characters, and I have a lot of them. and I will read the ones that were there when I made this document. But yeah, that's the structure coming here. So we're on to the characters, and they're in the order of their selection on the like campfire screen, which means that you have Rogue last, and the Rogue has some really interesting stuff. So saving maybe the most interesting for last. So the fish was a human male. He was 1 day from retiring at the time of the end of the world as we know it. And after the event, he was initially covered in sludge and preserved. So that's the reason that the fish wasn't active at the time. And of course, none of this timeline stuff is specific. That's just what happened, and it happened for however long, and then here we are. And Fish's home area, we have Oasis, which is the watery area and all those weird enemies, and with the fish in the like mines and stuff. Pretty interesting. And then the loading screen tips that were in the game at the time were the taste of mud, talking about him being covered in sludge and whatnot. Like Kevin Costner, I don't remember the reference. Gills on your neck, it's okay to eat, duty calls, and last day before retirement. Those were the ones that were in the game when this interview and document were done. So that's what I had on Fish. Crystal is JW thinks Crystal was human. Rami didn't really say, but Crystal was a female for sure. The story is certainly very sad, but it wasn't detailed to me. It wasn't specific in general. Rami doesn't think that there is like actually a specific to it at the moment. And Crystal is from the Crystal Caves, and going there is actually a very sad event for her. I freaking turned that off. That's fine. Thank you for the 4-month subscription, 18 Simon SP. So her home is the Crystal Caves, and it's very sad for her. So it's possible that like all of the crystals and things are her family, for example, and that would be really horrible. But like I don't even know what what to think her story would have been. The loading screen tips that were relevant or present at the time of this were Crystal can handle this, which I guess would be an emotional thing, and family, just family. So that would be a hint towards, at the very least, the crystals in the caves being her family, which would be pretty darn sad. So next is eyes, and we know absolutely nothing about eyes because eyes doesn't have a mouth and can't tell their story. Eyes has no home or significant area currently in the game, and that's like actually it. The loading screen tips are pretty much about abilities. Telekinesis pushes bullets away, eyes can't speak, all these thoughts, don't blink, and eyes sees everything. So that's really all the lore we have about eyes. I was like pretty upset about that. I was like, come on, Rami, you got nothing for me? He's like, nope, got nothing. So, unfortunate. So then we have Melting, who was a human, but we don't know its gender. We know that Melting, well, okay, actually, Rami thinks that Melting was at the very event for the end of the world as we know it, at like ground zero, which is apparently about as far from the palace as possible. And JW thinks that Melting was far from ground zero, and it wasn't like relevant or anything in distance from the palace, so like that was just completely irrelevant. But we don't know, you know, that's up to you to decide basically. I like Rami's idea of it, but you know, I think that the distance thing, as far as like the end of the world as we know it happened, and it was like as far away from the palace as possible, but the palace still got the effects, and that's why it ended up as like more like advanced and whatnot, but still like really crazy. But JW doesn't think so. So there's the popular story that people talk about steroids and Melting knowing one another, but that is 100% untrue. Melting and steroids did not know one another. Steroids didn't do any experiments on Melting, create Melting, or anything like that. None of the characters, in fact, know each other before the campfire. So when you, like, unlock a character with the actual character unlocks once they're in the game. That's like you meeting them and they come back to hang out at the campfire with you. But of course that's, you go into a different universe basically where you have met them and come to the campfire with you. And that's actually how it works. They don't know each other or anything. But you start with a couple because they found each other early enough, I guess. So melting lives in a constant searing pain because as melting is constantly dying and melting, and it's horrible, and it's really just unpleasant in every possible way. And melting has the ability to inflict some of that pain on enemies by blowing up their corpses, though they're already dead, of course. Melting is pretty much already dead, but also dying. Death is actually kind of a happy ending for melting, like being done with the pain, but they do want to reach the throne, because that's just kind of what the characters want to do. They know that for some reason they need to do it, and melting is no different there. So melting doesn't just die on purpose or anything, but is not particularly sad to die, you would say. And you get to, as melting, blow up your own corpse on death, and the spirit leaves the body and all that, and it's actually kind of happy. Melting doesn't have a significant area or a home or anything in the game, and that's about it. So loading screens for melting at the time were cough, everything hurts, melting is tired, it's so cold out here, and like shivering sound, you know, kind of thing. So that's what we had. Plant is next. Plant was a plant, apparently genderless. This is from Rami. Plant doesn't have a story, just likes killing stuff. And, you know, that's Plant. Plant, at the time, didn't have a home or significant area. I wasn't told about the jungle. I assume the jungle is for the Plant. I don't remember exactly. But I haven't been told about that. And that's like actually it about Plant. Plant just likes to kill stuff. Plant's loading screen tips were saying, Plant can hold RMB to see further, photosynthesizing, blood, 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 death, 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 and kill, kill, kill. And that's really very much what Plant is. So Plant was pretty simple. All the characters want to reach the throne, because that's just like they know they have to. It's like one of those things where it's, you know, that's the legend. Everyone talks about the throne, like the Proto mutant. And they've got nothing else to do while they fight to survive. So they're just they're just trying to go there, to the throne, to see if they can make any of this legendary stuff happen and, like, have a better life or fix things, stuff like that. That's what the characters want. Next we have YV, Young Venus. Young Venus is a god, a gun god. No gender, apparently. Not, like, confirmed male or female, just, like, god gender. No, we don't know anything about the Proto-Mutant, besides that the Proto-Mutant existed. So, YV, apparently no confirmed gender. And, YV looks at the quest to the throne as a challenge, just to, like, test themselves and hone their skills with guns and whatnot. And rather than dying, YV, as you know, just gets bored or annoyed or something and teleports back to the mansion. And YV's home is YV's mansion. But it's not like a significant visit, it's just like, hey, going to the mansion, apparently killing all these dudes that are just like in the mansion, because why not? And then taking one of these golden guns. YV actually has a ton of loading screens. We've got Pop Pop, No Popo, guns that wear vests, guns that hate Texas, guns with six senses, guns that straight festive, apparently. Guns that sign breastses, guns that make breakfast, guns that send textses, guns for fake necklace. Verify Venus, thanks Gun God, Young Venus is the best, Young Venus is so cool and too young to die. So that's your YV story. YV just wants to kill stuff to test themselves, sorry. Next we have Steroids. Steroids was a human, probably a male, but not certain. We don't know that. Steroids was a scientist, and actually had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. So they loaded up with steroids, basically. Got really strong to try and make sure to be prepared, and went into stasis, but ended up stuck in stasis, eventually to be woken up and brought back to the campfire, of course. But that's why steroids was out of action during the whole event, all that stuff. Steroids may in fact still be extremely smart, but not in the same way as the proto-mutant, or really even a scientist, just a much smarter mutant than the other mutants. It's possible, not confirmed. And for steroids, there is no home or significant area in the game. The labs are not steroids' labs and have nothing to do with steroids. So the loading screen tips were: get strong, get shots, appreciate revolvers, steroids used to be a scientist, steroids could do push-ups forever, and time to flex. So a lot of things that people thought about steroids were actually untrue, like the labs and whatnot, and the melting interaction thing. And then that's... I don't know anything about languages that the mutants knew. Rami didn't tell me those things, so I can't say if steroids knew a language before the end of the world as we know it or anything like that. I'm sure that they all probably knew some language, just I don't know what kind of anything steroids might have known that the others didn't. But yeah, I guess steroids reads on the title screen, so you can, or the campfire screen, so can still read. No, labs is no one. Melting is, you'll listen later. So, robot is next. Robot is a man-made robot, of course, because, you know, well, actually not of course. It could be like a machine-made robot from a factory or something, but robot is apparently a man-made robot. No gender, because it's a robot. There's nothing with the labs. The labs are like just labs that we don't really know anything about. Robot's home could be the scrapyard. When you first start seeing man-made things, this is where I first talk about Big Dog in the actual document. Big Dog is a particular example as a man-made robot retrofitted to be destructive, as I said. Big Dog was probably like a toy or something, or like a ride for amusement, something like that. Or Robot's home could be the Frozen City, where there are a lot of robots. We have all the wolf bots and the other bots, the snow bots, and that could be it. Robot's B-skin, though, is IDPD like style. So the robot could have been made for the IDPD to use in combat, but they could have lost it somehow, and you know, or the robot could have stolen the outfit from the IDPD somehow or another. Robot is not motivated internally. It cooperates with the characters though, just because it's in their group and knows what they're trying to do. So the robot's just like, it's just straight up a robot. So it's it knows what they're doing, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna help you guys, basically. Something about the Yeti? I don't think so, no. The robot's loading screen tips were: don't forget to eat weapons. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, which is just a reference, of course. Guns for breakfast. Then 74, 61, 73, 74, 79 for tasty. 3C33 for less than 3, the heart symbol. And then, you know, the same kind of style for one that says robot and one that says kill all humans, which, again, I'm pretty sure isn't serious, just a reference. Robot's not trying to betray everyone. Next we have Chicken. Chicken was a female. Could have been human. May have been a chicken. I don't know how that would work based on the next thing that's going to get said, but Chicken loves action movies and practices with her sword all the time. Chicken doesn't have a home or significant area in the game at the moment, or at least didn't. I don't think another... yeah, no, that's not a thing. Chicken's loading screen tips were just, again, amateur hour is over, never surrender, go, focus, remember the training, and Chicken loves her sword. So Chicken just likes being an action star, basically. And that's cool. Next is the Rebel. The Rebel is a female and was a bandit, but we don't know much about the bandits. And this is where the Rebel might be a robot thing comes from. The bandits might be robots. You know, some people didn't want to think that or believe that, but we don't know much about the bandits, and they might be robots. hanging around the explosive barrels could be due to light or power or something other than warmth like that. And it lends a reason for radiation canisters possibly being cleanup attempts, since robots aren't really at risk to do that. But JW doesn't think that's the case. JW just... I think JW thinks that the radiation canisters are just kind of a representation of the fact that there is radiation cluttered around, rather than an actual like cleanup attempt and they're actually contained there. But I think Rami thinks that they are actually like containers there, basically. I can tell you for sure that the like weapon chests and ammo chests and such are kind of more representative of like there are weapons about, and you just kind of find them, not like actual chests. So that's not as strict as at least Rami thinks the radiation canisters are. But I'm pretty sure that they are like actually a strict cleanup attempt or containment attempt. So Rebel's home is the Wastelands, but Rebel might not be from the same bandit factions that we fight. And like Big Bandit isn't like a really significant fight, but the Rebel may have been aware of Big Bandit's existence. I don't think I got a reason that Rebel left the bandits and joined the mutants, but it's possible. And I just don't have it, which I'm sorry about. I don't think I got a reason, though. So, Rebel's loading screen tips are: allies take damage over time, spawning new allies heals old ones, it will get better, a new generation, change is coming, forget the old days, scarves are great, the scarf is nice, spawning multiple allies costs less HP, and allies are a source of light. So, that's what we've got for Rebel. After that we have Horror. Horror is made of radiation, purely. Does not have a gender. The manner in which you unlock Horror and like summon Horror kind of suggests the origin of the Palace Guardians, where you like you skip a rad canister, which more could be considered as like letting the radiation continue radiating and get crazier and whatnot. And then once it gets like wild enough, it like actually turns into a radiation monster, pretty much. Spawning allies costing less HP was old. It's not true anymore. You're correct. That was just at the time. Now it costs more, I think. I don't know what they changed it to. Again, I'm sorry. This was made a long time ago. The loading screen tips are probably out of date, missing stuff. Some of them are incorrect. So, yeah, that might be how we get things like Palace Guardians, because you see in the Palace how there are lots of larger containers that are pumping radiation and things like that, and a lot more advanced of a method with those large pumps that take a lot of shots to kill. But it's possible that the Palace Guardians just evolved from those being left alone for too long and all that, and got really, really crazy. So this is where I say Rami thinks this, but JW doesn't. Radiation canisters were an attempt to quickly clean up the radiation after the end of the world as we know it, but they weren't done very well. And again, Rami thinks that, JW doesn't. But as time passes with them just being sitting around there, they get crazier, turn into monsters, and the Palace Guardians likely came out in the same way, just from the larger containers you see there. Many of the Palace containers are better made, but since on destruction, they actually don't explode into radiation, and weren't monsters at that point when you got there. So, it's just a different style, more advanced. Horror is in some way relevant to the Palace, but it may not be a home area or of much significance beyond that. So, Horror is pretty interesting, just not like really, really specific. For the loading screens at the time, they were the Horror Power. Horror's beam can destroy projectiles. Horror's beam powers up when fired longer. The Zone, and radiation is everywhere. So next we have Rogue, which is the most interesting, tied with Little Hunter. And I do mean that, like, you know. So, the Rogue was a post-human, as Rami described it, or something of an ascended human, where, like, I'll get to this more with the IDPD, but the IDPD, like, modified people to make them better, or something like that. Or they were a race that was better and decided to become the interdimensional police department. Rogue is a female. Now, Rogue had a disagreement with the IDPD, which is why she defected. And a better way to describe that could be had a strong disagreement with them to the point of disobeying orders, which is bad. And the idea is defection from the IDPD doesn't happen. It's completely unheard of, and they take it extremely seriously. The ideal unlock for Rogue, that obviously isn't in yet, is Rogue is imprisoned in the IDPD base in the loop, the one you take the car to. So you have to rescue Rogue from that, and that's where you get Rogue. Rogue's supposed to be like that crazy to get, basically. Rogue can still use IDPD technology, and while they do want to stop her, and like they do send people to do that, they don't do it too seriously. They're not like sending most of the force or a large portion of the force to try and kill her. JW, thank you for the 3 months. I appreciate that a lot. So they don't want to like destroy the planet or anything like that. They want to just kind of try and kill her here and there and get it done quietly, kind of. She's not fully armored, which means she is possibly more vulnerable to radiation and weaponry, which would explain differences between her and the actual IDPD enemies. And the IDPD may actually be counting on that, and that might be why they aren't sending as much resource at her, basically. So they aren't like, they expect that she'll just die kind of fighting other stuff, and that they'll just kind of clean it up a little bit, maybe. That was all we had at the time, and that leads us to the IDPD, who knows, like, the IDPD basically know a lot more about the state of the world and the past than anyone, like, in that world, basically. Somehow the IDPD has the technology to closely monitor everything on the planet, however they do that, you know. Their blue portals are really, really incredibly precise, and they can be used extremely efficiently, and they can transcend, and do transcend, dimensional bounds. So they can send troops anywhere quickly, and they can form the portals in such a way as to form a precision strike like Rogue does. Rogue uses portals to do that stuff. Which is pretty cool. They have figured out a way to utilize radiation more safely, or more efficiently at least, to give its forces abilities like the characters have. JW doesn't think that. JW thinks that they actually just use technology to give things like the shield power and the telekinetic power for their troops. But Rami thinks that they figured out how to harness radiation in a safer or more efficient manner to give them that power. If the robot was IDPD, in fact, it does convert radiation into updates, which would kind of give a reason that the IDPD would have that kind of technology. So if the robot had been there, it would have been able to do that stuff. And it would kind of give some credence to that theory. So the IDPD are most concerned with keeping the characters having nothing to do with anything that has to do with the Proto-Mutant. That's why they show up more in force with the Proto statues and whatnot, and when you're looping with crowns and stuff. They just, like, the more that you get to see, the more crazy stuff, especially stuff having to do with Proto-Mutant, they don't want that. They want you to have nothing to do with that. So they appear at the activation of green portals, always at the palace, when stuff's getting, like, really, you can learn stuff here, and at the campfire after the throne. It actually suggests that they all have something to do with the Proto-Mutant, of course, since that seems to be the thing the IDPD is most concerned with. Let's see. Campfire appearance with corpses either means that in that universe they ambushed and killed the characters, or that some event like the throne's final form coming into being or something, or showing up, went very badly. It killed all of the mutants at that campfire. It is possible that the IDPD... These are all theories, by the way. It's possible that the IDPD contained the final form after it killed the characters. It's possible they knew it would show up and wanted to make sure that nobody knew. And it is possible that they always had it contained, especially if it is actually the Proto-Mutant mutated into the final form, since they don't want people to figure it out. And that's why killing them releases it. Like, you kill the IDPD and out comes the final form of the throne. So, in this document, I didn't go into it, because I was supposed to make this and talk about this stuff before the before I was allowed to talk about it. But Little Hunter, this is actually the most important part, saved the best for last pretty much. Little Hunter and Rogue were friends. Little Hunter was sent to do something on the planet that was really dangerous and like alone or with very minimal reinforcements, and got like stranded, basically abandoned. They didn't want to go back for Little Hunter, and Rogue was really upset about that. They were close friends basically. So Rogue really fights the IDPD about that and is really unhappy about it. So that's why like Rogue is trying to disobey them to get that figured out and like save Little Hunter. So that's their disagreement. That's why Rogue defected from them. And so when Rogue goes to the fight with Little Hunter, and Little Hunter has gone crazy and everything, and like Little Hunter's supposed to be a sniper staying back and whatnot, and Little Hunter's gone like totally crazy just trying to kill everything and get it done quickly and whatnot. It's really, really sad for Rogue, and like that's probably like the deepest, most interesting lore, and I couldn't talk about that for a while, but they have this really strong relationship, and them having to fight is like really serious for Rogue, since it's the whole reason that she defected and disobeyed the IDPD. And that's kind of that's kind of the thing there. That's not hinted at really anywhere right now, but it will be. And that's the part of the lore that's like, you know, I thought that was worth waiting for, basically. I'm sure it could be told better, but now that it's there, people can figure it out and fill more stuff in. And that's actually all I have. That's all I've got in the document. There you go.